Welcome, everyone, to this night's Midnight Ranting, Pascals Wager, or rather, a continuation of last night's conversation on Pascal's Wager, in which we take a gamble on whether it's better to believe in the Christian God or not. So won't you join us, Sal, James, and myself, as we take some bets on the afterlife? Woohoo! I saw Sal was ready to go. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to him.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all the viewers out there. Amy was kind enough to grant me permission to rebroadcast this on my channel. So I'd like to also give greetings, not just to the audience here tonight, but also those joining us via recording, both on her channel and mine. So this coming Monday, I'm going to be debating Matt Dillahunty. I actually didn't ask for this debate, nor my last other debate. The owner of Modern Day Debate, James Coons, approached me and said, "Sal, will you debate T-Jump?" And I said, yes. Very next day, he said, "You did a great job. I want you up against higher profile opponents." He said, "How about Matt Dillahunty or Aaron Ra?" I said, "I'll take them both." So that's how all this transpired. And he said, "Well, do you want to suggest the topic?" And I said, Pascal's Wager. Now, I did actually have the privilege of talking to Matt Dillahunty, and I want to just say this publicly. He's actually one of my favorite atheists. I think as I've heard him talk, he's reflected many of the doubts and struggles that I've had, even though I ended up at a different place than he has ended up. And I felt that he is the most temperate in reason. So he's like one of my favorite atheists in the world. So I'm very privileged to share the stage with him this coming Monday. So that's how this all transpired. One thing that I suggested to Amy backstage is, because of that, the debate format that'll be only 2 hours, and who knows what's going to be talked about, I wanted to cover some material here that probably I won't have the chance to, just because of time constraints, that I really do like talking about. So I'm providing some exclusive content. So a little bit about me. I used to be a scientist and engineer in the aerospace and defense industry. I have 5 science degrees. I'm a Christian creationist. I used to believe in evolution. And now I'm a molecular biophysics research assistant for a famous geneticist, a retired geneticist, John Sanford, who had been an atheist at one time too, and then became a Christian and then a creationist. I've had the privilege of working for him for almost 7 years now. And he's basically given me like the equivalent of a scholarship over the last 7 years, where I've had the freedom to do research, things related to creation science, and then also to biology in general. Now, there is one thing, kind of the fun thing that I wanted to talk about tonight that I may or may not have the chance to on Monday night, is I actually was a professional level gambler. How that transpired is a long story, but when my father passed away in 2003, I was really in a lot of despair. And I learned about gambling games in my math classes, discrete mathematics. And it fascinated me. And I learned that you could beat the casinos. There are various games that can be beaten, such as blackjack. That was... the theory of that was resolved by MIT professor Edward Thorpe. And the theory is actually pretty easy, and it applies Pascal's gambling theory. Blaise Pascal was a pioneer of gambling theory, the mathematics of it. And so both casinos and people trying to beat the casinos studied Pascal's theory. To be fair, the credit should be shared between Pascal, Fermat, and Huygens, who founded the idea of what we call now expected value. And when one has an expected value advantage over your opponent, you'll make money. And so I played in the casinos until they kicked me out and started circulating my photos. So I get kicked out of one casino. I drive 300 miles to another one, and they'll identify me my name. And they say, "Well, have a nice night, Mr. Cordova." I'm like, "Oh man, the gig's up." My photos being circulated, and so I got kicked out of the casinos. I had a friend and mentor named Robert Michael Conjar. I can put it in his Wikipedia link into the private chat. I'm not able to put it in the regular comments right now. He's my friend and mentor. He was a professor in the Department of Mathematics and Computer Science at University of Detroit Mercy, which is actually a Catholic school. And before he passed away of cancer, I got to meet him personally several times. And then also the nuns, one of the nuns there, she was part of his blackjack team. So this was really cool. So that's one of the stories I wanted to share. He took the casinos for about $250,000 using his math skills before he got kicked out, and he gave it away to charity after he passed away. So then there is another one named Father Joseph Fahey. He's also kind of a role model for me. Father Joseph Fahey. He was a math teacher also. I believe he was in he was in the Jesuit order, and I put a link to that too. Father Joseph Fahey, a lot of money, and he did it for the glory of God. And because of his vows of poverty, he didn't keep the money. He donated it to Catholic charities. So those are just some interesting stories. Now the last time I talked to Matt Dillahunty was either 2015. No, I think it was 2016, June 18th. And I said, I was in the credits of the documentary Holy Rollers, which is about Christian gamblers, blackjack players specifically. And let me find the reference here. And just for those interested, I was put in the, I don't know if they still remember me, but some of them did know me by name, and my name is in the credits of the documentary since I helped to finance it. So let me put that in the private chat, and if that could be passed on, that'd be great. So that's just a little bit about me, and all this to point out is that I do look at this Pascal's Wager through the lens of someone who's played in the casinos, and I have a certain mindset. So that's pretty much it. I wouldn't mind talking a little bit more about some of my adventures and misadventures in the casinos, because I do invite everyone to see the debate between me and Matt, where we'll be talking a little bit more about theological issues. So thank you very much, Amy and James, for inviting me to come.
Absolutely, and I think there's a lot of fun stories we can dig into there. And
that sounds interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So without further ado, hand it off to James, and then we can all start talking.
Right. So, yeah, we did a stream last night on Pascal's Wager, and I saw Sal had a debate coming up with Matt Dillahunty, so I figured it'd be a good idea to bring him in and see what he has to say about it. Kind of do some opposition research, I guess, before the debate. And yeah, I guess we aired most of it, a lot of it last night. But just to reiterate, why this isn't really something that's very convincing to me, because there are literally an endless number of religions aside from Christianity that could be true. And it's not just a dichotomy of Christianity or atheism. There's a whole bunch of other religions that nobody even really considers. Nobody worries about it. I don't think Christians spend time laid up at night in their beds worried about, well, what if the Norse gods were true, and what if Buddhism is true? They don't really focus on that. They just focus on the faith that they were born into, based on, normally it's going to be where they're born. And the whole crux of Pascal's Wager is based on the doctrine of hell, which is such a brutal and large pill to swallow that it's effective at keeping people inside the faith. But and we touched on this last night. It wasn't really, it didn't start off as part of the religion. It was kind of adopted later on when the ancient Israelites got with other cultures, and they started integrating some of their ideas into the religion, and then Christianity came, and we got the doctrine of hell that we have today. But if you look in the Old Testament, it didn't really seem like there was a huge sense of urgency to try to convert everybody. They were just going about doing their thing. You would think if everybody at the time who didn't believe in the God of the Jews, if everybody else was going to go to hell, you'd think God would make that clear to begin with. But he really doesn't, because in the Old Testament, the afterlife is based, like Amy said, everybody basically went to the same place. There was no formal separation like Christian doctrine today holds. So yeah, I see it as a contrived doctrine as the religion evolved over time. And it's not very convincing to me, but I see really intelligent, really smart people talk about this topic. Like Sal here is very intelligent. James Coons has talked about Pascal's Wager before in debates, and he's a very intelligent man. So I always find it interesting to ask people and to learn from people why they believe what they believe and what makes them, how they arrived at their conclusions. So that's what we wanted to hear from Sal, is what why this is a reasonable argument to him.
Okay.
I have
So yeah,
there are a few things I saw in the chat that are irritating me a little bit. People are questioning my credentials. I'd like to try to address that.
Absolutely.
Okay. Here are my diplomas. If I'm faking it, you can contact George Mason University and they could sue me for fraud. Same with Johns Hopkins University. I'm going to take the diplomas one by one. My birth name is Angel Salvador Tuano Cordova. First diploma. Salvador Cordova, Bachelor of Science, Computer Science. And let me see the date. AD 1990. Second diploma. Bachelor of Science, Electrical Engineering, AD 2000. George Mason University. Third diploma, Bachelor of Mathematics with a minor in music. Minor in physics. By the way, my electrical engineering, they had a minor in music. This one had a minor in physics. AD 2001, George Mason University. Johns Hopkins University. August 31st, 2012. Master of Science in Applied Physics. October 14th, 2001, pilot's license awarded by the Federal Aviation Administration, Dulles Aviation Flight School. You could see me in the pilot registry. My master's equivalent degree, which I claim it's not an accredited degree, is in biology. I took classes at the FAES, Foundation for Advanced Educational Studies at the National Institutes of Health. I think I could pass on a copy of that. I've shown it on my screen. So, yes, normally I'm a gentleman, but when someone calls me a liar and a charlatan to my face, I'm not so nice. So, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't have to. And I'll tell you, I don't know if this bothers you. I feel like there's been an attack sometimes on other degree. I guess this is just me reflecting on the Dr. Harris thing. 'Cause one of my degrees I'm going for is in education. And I'm waiting for that one day when people say, well, that's not really a degree or something like that.
Dr. Harris, who's that?
Yeah. What can I tell you? But yeah, I think it's silly. I don't think James and I will ever. I think we know that it's almost silly to attack a theist's intelligence or degree and all that kind of stuff because it never pertains to the actual argument. Those sorts of ad hominems and stuff. And you've always. Oh, you're muted. And it wasn't me.
I provided one link there to the April 28th, 2005 edition of the April 27th, April 28th, 2005 edition of the prestigious scientific journal, Nature. It had me in the cover story talking about my Christian testimony and my promotion of intelligent design. It mentions there, the reporter reported me as having 3 science degrees, and that was in 2005. My other degrees were earned since then. So it's not like someone hasn't tried to confirm my story.
I was just going to say, yeah. I mean, when you listen to Sal speak on these topics, you could tell that he knows what he's talking about. He's not just regurgitating stuff from creationist websites. He is really talking about it because he actually does know the material. And you could tell that, he's not some Ken Hovind type character who, really doesn't know all that much. But, and even Sal will say that a lot of these arguments that the young earthers use, he doesn't find them to be meritful. So he tells them, stop making that argument. Like the thermodynamics thing, he's shut that down a few times because when they misunderstand the laws of thermodynamics.
So back to the topic, and Amy, yes, I'm not always nice, okay?
No,
the other time I will lose my temper is when someone tries to hurt my mother, and someone tried to, and it wasn't pretty how I turned. I was not very nice, okay? Just suffice to say, if someone treats my mom bad, you'll see another side of me. So
somebody made the challenge and you answered it. What more can you say,
And my joke normally with comedy and everything, when they try and be, I never want to punch down, but some people, when you're getting punched, you also sometimes need to punch back.
So maybe back to the topic, I probably will take some angles that are different than what other Christians have said, or there's also ways that arguments that are attributed to Christians that they necessarily may not make. One of the problems is Pascal's Wager. The original wager is not necessarily how it's presented in the modern day. And that's really no one's fault. Everyone will kind of take an idea and, it's mostly Pascal's Wager, but then they'll change a few things. So,
Well, I had a question for you.
sure.
Because I'll give you one of the problems we were talking about, and maybe you can defend it. So last night we were talking about how a lot of atheists, we see this one as, we feel like we got a really good rap on this. That's why I didn't even make a really big opener. So what made you, I think you kind of explained, you said kind of gambling, kind of mathematics. What made you interested in this theological argument specifically?
Okay, so what it would help to know what the actual argument is first,
Yeah.
and the original one, and then I'll give you my variation on it. That's just to be fair, and I'm sure James will have his variation. And it's not like anyone's trying to straw man anyone. Because they're just speaking from the way that they understand things. So I'm not going to, if I could briefly share my screen, would that be possible?
Yes. Do I have to let you do something, or can you just do it?
I think you have to add.
I see it.
Right. And if this is StreamYard, there is a thing you need to click. Is this, yeah, it is StreamYard. There might be
it should, I
an
just
icon that says,
it should have added.
Let me undo this. Let me stop sharing.
Because I see your YouTube. No, I think it worked. I saw your YouTube.
Okay. Maybe this worked.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, I posted the wrong screen. All right. So if we look at the original text, and we may have only fragments of this, it says there are parts of it that are just unreadable. Part of it is possibly the fact that it was written in French. And translating French to English, we can lose a few things. But Pascal, he said, maybe in his own words, let us weigh the gain and the loss in wagering that God is. Let us estimate these two chances. If you gain, you gain all. If you lose nothing. So that's the original. That is probably as close to a statement of the original. And so maybe getting back to your question, Amy, what was it that was compelling to me to look at this?
What made you really interested in this of all arguments? You even said, I think, that James asked you, like, what do you want to do? And you're like, oh, yeah, Pascal's Wager. So what made you so interested?
Yeah, right. And James, that's James Coons, not James W.
Yes, the other James.
The other James, Modern Day Debate. This was, it goes back to 2000, 2001 when I nearly left the Christian faith. And everything that one reason that Matt Dillahunty's words really resonate with me is everything that he says now is all the reasons that I was nearly wanting to leave the Christian faith. But there are a couple reasons I didn't. One, when I was 13, I was in the Catholic Church, and just one night before my Catholic confirmation, just the ceremonies, they had all the 13-year-olds. I think I was 13. I don't remember. Forgive me. That was a long time ago. I think I was about 13. And we were just going through the rehearsal of how the ceremony is supposed to go. And so we were just singing hymns, and I was just reading my hymn book, and someone cut the light on in the middle of the service. It was evening, and I'm like, man, that's kind of annoying. And I looked up, and I saw this really bright light. And, I said, I hope someone shuts that light off. And I just kept, trying to read out of the hymnal and just keep singing. But that light wouldn't go away. And I looked up again. I realized it wasn't someone messing with the church lights. There was like a tongue of fire coming out of the right side of the cross. It's like a flame. So it wasn't like I was in any emotional frenzy to try to have visions. That's not anything that I was looking for. And it took me a while to figure out what I was seeing. And, I looked down again at my hymnal, then looked back up, and the flame slowly died and just went away. And it's like, what was that? And I went home. I thought I was going to die. And then there've been a few things where it seemed a prayer was answered. And probably one thing that was very influential is I saw a guidepost of Charles Duke out there on the bus stop one time when I was going to college. And I said, that's an interesting story. He returned from the moon and he became a Christian. About 13 to 15 years later, I met him in person. He came out to Campus Crusade for Christ. And he had books, and I bought an autographed book. In that book, it gives an account of him praying for a blind girl after he became a Christian, and the girl got healed. And so my mom was in a car accident with a drunk driver, and they thought she'd never walk again. And I asked the Presbyterian minister to pray for her. He went to her hospital bed. He prayed for her. That afternoon, she began to get movement in her leg. So yes, the account by Charles Duke, that prayer by the Presbyterian minister, those could have been coincidences. The flame coming out of the cross could have been a hallucination. But, again, what do you do? These are data points I couldn't quite get rid of. And so going to Pascal's Wager, I said, well, people like Matt Dillahunty have a very good point. The Christian God seems just as silent as all the other gods, meaning you and I can have a conversation, we interact, and I say things and then you say things and we interact. But the Christian God and the other gods seem to be just as silent, except again, I had that vision. And then I also had, I got involved, unfortunately, as a Christian, I got involved in the paranormal, and there were some really strange things. I had some telekinetic ability for a while, and it was gone, thank God, when I became a Christian. So there were just things I couldn't. It's like, well, I can't completely believe in God, but I can't completely disbelieve in God either. And that is very similar to the situation in professional gambling, where uncertainty is the norm. It's rare that you have 100% certainty about the next card that's going to be dealt. It's very rare. And sometimes the only way you get certainty of the next card is the dealer accidentally flashes it, or there's things like that, and there are ways to take advantage of that. So that influenced my decision making. So in 2000, in the 2001 timeframe, I said, okay, so I can't completely believe and I can't completely disbelieve. What do I do now? And I think there are a lot of people there. There are a lot of people who understand this, and we also live with it. Decisions are forced upon us with incomplete knowledge. That's actually very common, where we make decisions with less knowledge than we would like. I mean, if we knew the outcome of every day, like let's say you knew what the stock market was going to be tomorrow, and you could do that for a year, you would be phenomenally wealthy. So the decisions, even on the practical level, where we have almost always less information than we would like to be able to make a decision. So the idea of being able to make a bet on the direction of your life, be it a big decision or small decision, on many levels, it's being made with less information than you would like. And that applies even to ideas of religion. And that actually doesn't really square well with some pastors who argue for infallibility, and just like, okay, so you say the Bible's infallible. How do you know that? Are you infallible? And I could tell you a lot of pastors are not. Of course, that would be just raising red flags. So I'm trying to point out that we humans are faced with making pretty big decisions with incomplete information. And that's why I was interested in Pascal's Wager, not so much as an evangelistic tool. So maybe a lot of Christians try to use it. I don't know. I don't hear a lot of Christians try to use it, but sometimes when I repeat it, they say they recognize some of the elements of Pascal's Wager. So that's why I was interested in it. And then being in the gambling world where it was the norm to have uncertainty. In fact, I would have done very much better in blackjack, or anyone would, if they knew what the card next is coming out. What you do in blackjack is you try to estimate the odds of the card that's going to come out of the deck based on the cards that you've seen dealt out already. So just for example, that's why 52 card single deck games are really easy to beat. If the dealer has dealt out half the deck and you haven't seen any aces or face cards, or a very low proportion of face cards, you know the deck is loaded with face cards and aces. You ought to load up the bets at that point, because you have a huge, what they call expected value advantage over the house. And I was doing that, and they'll catch on that you're counting the cards and they'll kick you. I got escorted out by security after 45 minutes. There was one time when I was at a Las Vegas casino, and I knew that I realized there was another counter beside me. He was betting $5. But as the cards were getting dealt out, I said, I haven't seen a lot of aces or face cards. Of course, you're trying to methodically count this and estimate the probabilities. And I noticed he started raising his bets. And I said, yeah, I'm raising mine too. He must be a counter. So he started betting off at $5 at the beginning of this 6-deck shoe. Toward the end, he was betting 1,000. I said, yeah, it's really obvious. He knows by extra observation that the probabilities have changed. So all this to say, that influenced me, that life is so full of uncertainties, and we rarely ever make decisions with perfect information. And I think decisions about life and the hereafter are kind of in the same ballpark. And I get kind of distrustful of people that say they absolutely know, they have all the proof, and just like, well, that's just not my temperament. When I was in the scientific enterprise, you're skeptical of yourself and people that work for you. And when you built products, you welcome people testing what you built, because you knew you're fallible. So my interest in Pascal's Wager is a little different than the idea that I'm trying to evangelize people or persuade them. I'm trying to get them to think a different way and admit their fallibility and say, okay, what do we do with incomplete information?
Dean, do you want to go speak next?
I just wanted to ask Sal a question. Now, if you don't want to answer, that's fine. But a while back, you said something about that you had some sort of metaphysical power. Were you like dabbling with the occult, or?
Yeah, because I got these books on the paranormal, and I was fascinated. And again, some of this was in the family too. So even, how it can be where someone is a professing Catholic, but then they do things that the church wouldn't approve of. That's right. Really typical, especially in the Catholic Church. And this was in the 70s, in the era of Uri Geller and other psychics. And I was fascinated by ESP shows and ghost shows. I don't watch them anymore. They're too troubling for me. There was a history of fortune telling in my family, and so specifically with telekinetic ability, I tried to be able to zap insects with just the force of my mind, and I could see an insect crawling up the wall, and I'd focus on it, and I'd try to paralyze it, and it would just fall off the wall if I concentrated strong enough. And it caused a lot of psychic disturbance inside of me. Now, Christians will say that ability comes from demonic forces, of which I would be, I lean toward that. Now, James Randi had these experiments where he had these, he would award someone $1 million if they could demonstrate all this ability on call. Mm-hmm. And I said, yeah, I totally respect that too. But on the other hand, if someone has this ability, they don't need to take that $1 million challenge. They could play cards. Now, this is really kind of funny. there was a discussion. I was a member of some quasi-secret, not completely, quasi-secret professional gamblers. And every now and then the topic would come up. It's like, well, could we use ESP because we want to make money? So, I mean, this topic has come up even in gambling circles. But that was something that it's like, well, it's kind of hard to, I can hallucinate about seeing a vision, but how it affects things in the physical world, that was an observation. Now, even that, granted, could be a hallucination, and then we could just go on and on from there. So I tried to be able to, I experimented with telepathy, but I wasn't successful with telepathy. So like I had a friend, he would look at a card and I'd say, okay, try to transmit to me what card that is, and I'll see if I could tell you what it was. I was not successful in that, but what ended up happening was there's a lot of spiritual disturbances then. My partner got really scared, and we invited a girl at one of these telepathy sessions. She ran out of the house. She was so scared. She said she thought she saw a demon. This was in high school. So I don't talk about it very much, but shortly thereafter I became a Christian and I abandoned all that.
So you were reading books to learn all these occult practices, or word of mouth? Or you read books about
reading
it?
books. They had it in the school library and also the public library, a little Woodrow Wilson library.
Were you surprised to find that when you applied it, that it worked for you? I mean,
I believe that it would. Actually, no. I just thought that would be normal. And of course, that was the time around Star Wars, and you saw all that with them using the Force. And I said, maybe I could try using that. So it was a very appealing religion to me. And maybe I might talk about some of the other religions. If I weren't a Christian, I'd probably be interested in the Eastern religion.
Well, I actually had questions on the paranormal, what I call paranormal activity too, but I wanted to start by saying, you said you started as a Catholic. Are you still a Catholic?
No, I'm a Reformed evangelical.
Reformed evangelical, okay.
Well, I mean, just to get all the technicalities, I was a member in good standing at the Presbyterian Church of America. So people that are curious what my theology was, that's very close to that. Because of mom's needs here, I had to transfer to a congregation that was closer, and I ended up going to Bible churches, and they have slightly different theology regarding baptism, but that's about it. So if someone looks at the Presbyterian Church of America theology, that would be very close to what I believe. So yes, even though I saw the vision in the Catholic Church, I didn't remain there.
So when someone says, Amy, that they're Reformed, that usually means they're a Calvinist, like the Presbyterian. That's a Calvinist denomination.
Oh, really?
They derive a lot of their idea, like James White, Reformed Christianity. They derive a lot of their beliefs from John Calvin.
Calvinism is the one that makes more kind of definite positions on determinism, right?
Yeah, they have that slant, and they go there to varying degrees, but yeah, that's where they're at.
So yeah, I wanted to ask two questions then. So do you think it's your conversion from, were you believing anything when you were reading these paranormal books, or?
I was believing in the paranormal.
Okay.
And again, I was a teenager, like age 14, 15. And so, and it wasn't like I got a huge amount of religious education in the home. I mean, I was sent off to Catholic Sunday school, but a lot of Catholicism is just learning the ceremonies and knowing what to say and what to recite. And we would go to the mass, but we wouldn't remember what was said. And some of the Sunday schools were about the same. I'm sorry to say, I'm embarrassed to say that. I was more interested in watching Spider-Man cartoons after I was kind of bummed out. I had to go to mass and then Sunday school because I really wanted to watch Spider-Man. That's all I remember
I'm
about
very
my Catholic
sympathetic to
experience.
that. I was sent to synagogue, and that's basically how I was like, I could be playing video games or, reading comic books, but here I am at the synagogue.
But I guess the appeal of the Eastern religions or the paranormal was the idea you could have power and you could just do cool things. I said it'd be really neat to read people's minds.
Well, then my follow-up was that you believe that it's almost like you had this power, you're saying, but the belief that when you converted to Christianity, it's almost like it blocked it. It made you unable to do it.
I stopped practicing it because, well, that's a really good question. I just remembered I lost desire for it. That's maybe the more accurate thing. But then now looking back, it's like, now I would avoid it like the plague because it opens your mind. So they're even like, I don't watch horror films anymore.
Really?
All you need to do is watch the news. Okay. I will watch the news. All right. Because there's plenty of horrors in the real world.
I feel like you should swap those categories around.
Yeah. So, and this is why I had the conversation with James. The one thing that really terrified me was shortly after I became a Christian was this. I was watching some talk show and a guy said, he thinks we've been invaded by aliens and the aliens are controlling our destiny. And I couldn't sleep at night. It disturbed me so badly.
Really?
And as I began to pray with people and ask for God's peace, I stopped being afraid of space aliens. And many years later, decades later, that's when I heard about things like alien abduction, that's actually the title, Alien Intrusion. That's the title of a creationist video, that a lot of the cases of alien abduction are probably demonic. There may be, most of them are probably just like possibly hallucinations, but there's a residual amount that seems to be very credible. And so there's a certain group that will say, these are definitely space aliens. And the other group will say, well, we agree that a phenomenon happened, but it looks demonic. And I fall into the latter camp. So again, this just relating it back to Pascal's Wager. For everything that Matt Dillahunty said, I said, you've made a very good case. I'm almost, at one time in my life, I was like 90% right with Matt Dillahunty. I said, there's a hidden God. There's a lot of problems with evil and some things that have sadly touched my family personally. If you Googled the name Connie Reyes, she was murdered in the 1990s and also a victim of assault. We don't need to go into graphic detail since we're family friendly, but I think you know what I mean. And that was, I'm not unique. There are all sorts of people that have seen horrible, tragic things. And it's like, well, God, you had all this power. Why did you let it happen? So I'm like right there with Matt. And then what about the hiddenness of God? He could just make his presence as evident as the air we breathe. So there I was with like 90%. And then there's that 5-10% that I just couldn't extinguish. And that's kind of where I am, where I've been for a lot of my life. Although now professionally researching the creation evolution debate, I've been more convinced that the creation account is true. I mean, that's just my personal assessment, and I talk about it a lot. I've That's one reason I've went back to science school. In 2005, I only had 3 degrees, and I struggled to get more because I wanted to settle the issue partly in my own mind.
I was going to, I had another question, but I wanted to hand it off to James maybe for a second, because I'm agnostic on some of the subject you just talked about, but I think James has some of the views.
Yeah, I've talked with Sal before about it. I mean, we didn't really get to unpack it all, but we went through a lot of it. My views on aliens, and how we didn't really get to go into the occult and how I think those possibly could be linked together. But that there will be time for that on another day. But I did want to ask Sal with regard to Pascal's wager. So what would you say if someone said, as far as that goes, that if you have to use that argument to justify your faith, then you're probably in trouble, because at that point it's almost just like you're hedging your bets that this God exists, but you're not really convinced. You're not really sure he exists. You just want to try to hedge your bets in case the very unlikely scenario is true, that he just happens to exist. It would seem like God would know your heart that you don't really believe.
Well, if I could share my screen again, Amy. And this is actually going back to the original literature, Pascal's. So Pascal, in his writings, kind of tried to synthesize what he thinks a hypothetical sympathetic skeptic would say. And again, some of this is lost in the language of translating it from French to English, and then also this is like in the 17th century. So anyway, the sympathetic skeptic says, I confess it, I admit it, but still, is there no means of seeing the faces of the cards? What I interpret this, and also because I had the opportunity to see the whole thing in context, is the sympathetic skeptic is saying, I agree with your logic. He's saying, would it be nice to see the faces of the cards? Because this is, again, the gambling analogy is you're trying to know what the next card that's going to be dealt out, but you don't have that information. He said, but still, is there no means of seeing the faces of the cards? Like, I'm translating this, it's like, well, can't we have a little taste of heaven right now or see God? And he says, I'm so made that I cannot believe. So he's confessing that Pascal has some logic here, but he's saying, I still can't believe. That's not the basis of my faith. And so I'm trying to answer James's question with actually Pascal's own words. And he said, what then would you have me do? Says the skeptics. So this, I put in the brackets here, the hidden God. That's kind of like the means of seeing the faces of the cards. I would say those are hidden cards. Pascal responds, true, but at least learn your inability to believe, since reason brings you to this, and yet you cannot believe. So this sympathetic skeptic is saying, yeah, I'd like to believe, but I can't. And that resonates a lot with me. It's like, again, there are many situations in life where we would like to believe something, but we're not convinced. Like you hear something bad about your friend, and you'd like to be convinced he didn't do as bad a thing as what you're hearing. I mean, so this plays out on many levels where you'd like to be reassured, but oh man, you have those doubts. So Pascal is saying true, but at least learn your inability to believe, since reason brings you to this, and yet you cannot believe. Endeavor then to convince yourself. Now, I put the ellipsis there. If you read what Pascal suggests, he says, well, go to Mass, take holy water, and try to abate all of your worldly passions. That'll help you. Okay, that's not the path that I took. The path that I took, so it is, to James's point, is this a basis for belief? I'd say no. It's a basis for seeing that it might be good to believe. It might be.
So it
And
seems like, oh no, continue your point.
well, really, it's not exactly. I mean, in some common sense, in a really common sense way, you don't even need Pascal's wager. You'd really like to just know the facts, and then your mind is at
Well,
peace.
Well, it
But
sounds like what he's almost saying is like, well, even if you're not convinced of it, if you go through the motions, you go to church, you read the Bible, at some point maybe God will send you a sign, and then you'll have the ability to believe. It sounds like that's what he
or
was
he'll do
getting at.
something. So I can only relate what happened to me. I was at that point, and I said, "Well, it says in the Bible, don't expect for God to hear your prayers if you don't have faith, if you're doubting." And I'm like, "Well, that kind of sucks because I want to ask Him to give me faith, and it says if I don't have faith, He's not going to bother hearing me." But it did say in James 5:16, also by the same author, confess your faults before one another so that you may be healed. So what I did is I went to my prayer group, and this is what I'll recommend to any Christian. I said, "Will you pray for me? I don't have it in me to believe anymore. I mean, pray that God will do something, because I can't force myself to believe something I don't." But again, I was at that point, like I said, 90% I disbelieve, but there's that 10% I just couldn't extinguish. And I said, but I said, I've run out of gas. I don't have it in me. And that was part of a 2-year healing process. And one way that I began to resolve those doubts, it was actually, first of all, hanging out with atheists. They did a lot to make me turn me back on the path to Christianity.
that's okay. Hang out with us more.
Yeah. It's very, very simple. I said, well, what's in it for me to be an atheist? Why will my life be better? And this is not intended as a slight to anyone. I sincerely mean that, because I have a lot of atheist friends. And
Can I answer that question?
yeah, please.
And so, why I think it's a better reason to be an atheist, and see, we're convinced for different reasons, but I'm currently convinced that not only, and this is there no good evidence for God, that I find a lot of harm in a lot of, especially from fundamentalism, and it, to me, kind of the more metaphorical that we get in religion, the less harmful. I'm throwing barbs down. So I'm looking to be convinced. And so I wanted to ask my first, I'll do the first, I guess, objection. It's normally proposed as Christianity and not Christianity. So what do you say when the skeptic says, well, it's not really a Christianity versus not Christianity. It's Christianity versus Muslim versus Judaism versus Hinduism, and then infinity, and then eventually us, the skeptic. So
What we do, and what we would do in the gambling world, is we assign the probability of something being true versus the rewards. I mean, it's not that mysterious. We tend, let me try not to be so technical. We tend to value someone's opinion, one person's opinion, a little bit more than someone else's. And so the testimony of the religious writers, the authors of the manuscripts that were handed down that we call the Bible, we can measure the credibility of that versus other religious manuscripts. One thing that distinguishes Christianity from other religions, and this wasn't my observation, it was an observation by a physicist who turned into a Christian minister. His name's John Polkinghorne. He's a quantum physicist, and then later on in life he became a Christian minister. And I said, I've got to read what he has to write, because I was fascinated by physics. And he said Christianity is different from all other religions because it makes bold claims about history. It makes claims about people and places. At least these can be partially confirmed. That's a big plus. With respect to creationism, there's the claim of Jesus' genealogy that's in Matthew 1 and Luke chapter 3. what, and even to this present day, what would make it hard for me at this present time to just walk away from Christianity is the fact that I've read the works of geneticists and I've talked to epidemiologists personally. All of them uniformly say the human genome is deteriorating. Several of them have said we don't know why we're still alive as a race. One way that this is reconciled is if humanity is relatively recent, and that would agree kind of in broad terms with a literal reading of Luke chapter 3. Now, granted, that's a thread, but it's a non-vanishing probability. It's non-zero. It's enough to give me pause, even if I were still the doubting Thomas I was, and I still have doubts every day. But if I were the doubting Thomas I was in 2001, I said this is just a little bit too much. And one way to resolve the issue, there's still open issues with this, and then also with what they call the dating of mitochondrial Eve. Dr. Dan Stern Cardinal and I have had conversations. He has one viewpoint, and I respect his opinion. He's questioned some of the experimental results that we've had on what they call the pedigree mutation rates in females. One paper said then, one by Parsons said that if we extrapolate our measurements, it means that mitochondrial Eve lived 6,500 years ago, which is right in line with the Bible. Dr. Cardinal, just in fairness to him, will challenge that. And I said, well, I'm again in that situation. I can't fully disbelieve and I can't fully believe. And the nice thing about science, if we're alive long enough, we might be able to get a better handle on what's closer to the truth. But the fact that the human genome is deteriorating and it can't be explained by, no one can really explain it. Part of my professional job was to go to the National Institutes of Health and investigate this project called ENCODE, because there was an evolutionary biologist that was very upset with the ENCODE project consortium. ENCODE is the Encyclopedia of DNA of Coding Elements, Encyclopedia of Coding Elements, DNA, and it's run by people trying to do medical research. It's like a $500 million or more project. And they declared that the human genome was probably more functional than anyone thought. They gave a figure of 80%. I don't think anyone will know exactly. But an evolutionary biologist was livid. His name was Dan Grauer. He said, if ENCODE is right, evolution is wrong. And so part of my professional work, as I said, I work for a geneticist John Sanford, who invented the gene gun. That's why he became famous. A large portion of genetically modified organisms are through his gene gun process. John Sanford said, Sal, I want you to go learn everything you can about ENCODE. And it shocked me how angry evolutionary biologists were at medical researchers, because these guys were not creationists. They were just trying to do their job and trying to figure out what's going on inside the cell. And that really caught me, that evolutionary biologists are actually angry about laboratory results. I'm like, that's kind of strange. It's like, is there something kind of eating at you? And so Dan Grauer said, if ENCODE, these medical researchers, if ENCODE is right, evolution is wrong. And so I had a debate with Dan Stern Cardinal, two-part debate in the summer of 2020, and we covered a little bit of it. But again, this is where Pascal's Wager is in play. I couldn't, at this stage, I couldn't just write off creationism. I said, there's enough anomalies there that are very disturbing. And then also, I got part of my learning process was being assigned, having the privilege to work and be mentored by creationists who are actually teaching at secular universities, accredited universities, and publishing in secular venues. One of them is an adjunct professor at Vanderbilt Medical School, and I have papers that are an abstract I have papers published with him. Then also Change Tan at University of Missouri. She teaches molecular biology. She's a physical organic chemist, Harvard trained. And I'm like, there seems to be more and more of these creationists that are very, very well credentialed that totally don't believe in evolutionary theory. And then part of my professional work was to actually highlight aspects of evolutionary theory that don't agree with physics and chemistry. So that's kind of where I'm going with Pascal's wager. It's like, okay, I don't think we can zero out the probability. Whether it's a basis for faith or not, I'd probably say no, it's not a good basis of faith. But it is a good basis for trying to assess whether you're 100%, everyone should be willing to ask themselves, am I 100% sure about what I'm hearing? And James actually said something that was in the after show. Do you remember that really kind of sad night when we found out about speed of sound?
Yeah, I remember.
Tragedy. You said something that was the sentence of the whole evening there. And we were talking about origin of life. I was arguing a little bit with Erica, and everyone was giving Erica a hard time, which I feel really bad about. Because she's my friend, and I don't like seeing all these confrontations that are just getting a little too personal. And then James said, well, there's only so many hours in the day, and I can't really investigate everything by myself. I have to rely on someone else's words. And I said, yeah, me too. Oh my goodness. And that's kind of like, there's a lot of evidence. There's a lot of our decision making we actually have to depend on other people to provide our information. We're not there to gather it ourselves. And I thought that was the most important. I still remember that. I wish I could have clipped that out. I don't think I could go through that whole 9-hour video to try to clip that one.
No.
But I said, you know what? What James said is also true of just about everyone. We're in a situation, we make decisions about our lives. And it depends on the testimony of others, whether we like it or not. There's only so much we could do to investigate things with our own eyes and ears. And that is kind of like, sobering how limited we actually are in being able to ascertain truth. And so this, again, goes to Pascal's wager. I said, we have to make so many decisions of our lives, and we have maybe incomplete and unreliable information to make these decisions on. And so what do you do? And
so can I push back a little?
Yeah.
So I want to ask, do you believe in either one of these? Do you believe in micro or macro evolution?
I believe in microevolution. There are phases of macroevolution. I wouldn't say macroevolution in general. I know specific areas like what they call eukaryotic evolution that I don't believe in, or major families of protein evolution. And ironically, Dr. Dan Stern Cardinal agreed with me. You'll have to ask him to get his take on it, but I got him to agree that he doesn't believe all proteins descended from a single ancestral gene. And I thought that was a big concession on his part. So I don't believe in macroevolution in general, but there are specific cases that I don't believe, which is eukaryotic evolution. And I'm presently working on writing publications to that effect.
So then my follow-up question is, doesn't that mean you believe in evolution?
I believe in some. I don't believe in universal common ancestry. So evolution has many definitions. So I think organisms are subject to change, but I personally believe, I can't fully defend it. And just for the sake of being full disclosure, I believe that humans were created pretty much in their present form, and pretty much a literal interpretation of the Bible. I didn't used to believe that. I was an old earth creationist for a very long time after I became a Christian. For maybe about a year after I became a Christian, I still believed in evolution like I had learned it in grade school.
So do you believe in the Adam and Eve story, like a literal interpretation?
Yes.
And
So if I could just qualify that,
absolutely.
we have our personal beliefs and then our capacity to actually prove it based on the evidence. And so there's a point when we just believe something and we can't always articulate it. There is some evidence to that effect. So if I were teaching this, I'd say, hey, there are problems with trying to prove this. On the other hand, there are also problems trying to prove that it wasn't true. And that gets into some really technical areas, but I'd mentioned it briefly, the pedigree mutation rates in human female mitochondria, and also genetic deterioration. And for those two big reasons, it's like, yeah, the creationist case it would bother my conscience to say we have no data. It would still also bother my conscience to say that there are no problems. So professionally, I'll say, hey, I think it's at this stage, there needs to be more data to resolve the issue. On a personal level, I totally believe it now.
And you'll have to understand, I struggle because, in my view, I could say almost as a knowledge claim that women came first, as in women formed from kind of an asexual reproduction that made clones, but then eventually, as sex came around, it really dominated because of how awesome sex is. But not only just because of feelings, but because of the mixing of different genes, and it seems to be we have good reasons to think that women came first, and then why men came, and why both units are still around.
Well, what I've always suggested is just people who are very interested, who are willing. Can you excuse me? I need to
Yes,
take a commercial break.
100%.
We'll fill in some
Hi, James.
airtime.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what were your views, James?
On what specifically?
Oh, anything we're talking about. I actually have millions of cards if you want me to talk.
I mean, yeah, there's a lot of different things we can talk about. Yeah, he mentioned the after show with that debate, and because John Maddox, and I don't dislike John Maddox as a person, but he can be a little he's sneaky. He's a trickster, I'll say that. But he likes to ask like gotcha questions. He likes to bring things up that he thinks you're not going to have any clue about. So then you look like an idiot because you don't know what he's talking about. And then he was asking, he's like, he starts getting into the nitty gritty, small details, the minutia, the complicated minutia of evolution theory. And it's like, oh, you haven't done any research on this. It's like, well, I haven't done that, but there are plenty of PhD doctors and biologists that have, and I'm never going to know more than they are, and they don't seem to be convinced by your argument. So, I don't. Why should I trust you, guy on the internet, John Maddox, that you got it right, and the 99% of biologists who don't agree with him, that they're all wrong.
Yeah, and no, what I find most offensive about his questions is we all hate it's the hot word the past few years, Dunning-Kruger. We all hate when people pretend to know things that they don't. But when they ask you something and you admit that you don't know, and they get angry that they don't have to explain it to you, then why the fuck ask the question? You know what I mean? Like, if someone's admitting to you honestly that they don't know, then don't freak out and say, I feel bad. I don't know if I should curse in front of Sal's mom. But that you shouldn't freak out at people for honestly inquiring. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's like it's like the guy I was talking about yesterday, who I challenged him to a throwdown debate, and hour later he got kicked off of YouTube and his channel removed. But and this is a guy who would probably struggle to pass like a high school physics test, and there's nothing wrong with that. Not everybody can be a physicist genius, but then he's looking at people like Lawrence Krauss, and he's just hand waving away what they're saying. And it's like, how can you do that? How can you, who knows very little about physics, just hand wave away somebody who has a PhD and has spent decades working with physics, teaching physics? I mean that's like classic Dunning-Kruger, because you've read a few articles online, maybe you've done maybe you've read a little bit about it, but you're never going to know more than Lawrence Krauss. So if you think that you do, you're only deluding yourself.
Well, it's funny. I love Lawrence's Krauss, and he both does us well and does us harm when he makes books like A Universe from Nothing, because he is trying to be tongue-in-cheek. He's basically saying, look, you have used the word nothing, and then blah blah blah, atheist, nothing, nothing. I'm now going to make a joke out of it. We now have to deal with for the rest of our lives and forever. Theists saying, but Lawrence Krauss says you came from nothing. It's like he made a book because you guys were saying it, and now you're okay.
Yeah, that's what he was complaining about. Lawrence Krauss's book, Something from Nothing, or A Whole Universe from Nothing, and that is very unintuitive. And to be clear, we don't know that it came from nothing. We don't really know where it came from or how it got started. But Lawrence Krauss, his angle is that even if you assume that there was nothing, you could, which doesn't have to be, but even if you assume that, you could still get a universe because of random quantum fluctuations and we know that even empty space is full of virtual particles. These are not real particles. They're considered virtual. They pop in and out of existence. I don't think anybody really knows why, but nevertheless they do. And I don't know if you've ever heard the concept of the Boltzmann brain. Have you?
We were just talking. Not only were we just talking about, but Haley, my roommate from in here, she was like, "You should do a whole podcast on the Boltzmann brain."
Yeah, and that
I don't know much about it.
Well, I mean, to simplify it a lot, it's talking about random quantum fluctuations and things popping into existence out of nothing. And it's like if the universe was given enough time, eventually you would get basically a brain it would be an entity that would come to life just from quantum fluctuations, and it would just be a brain. It wouldn't necessarily have a body or anything. But yeah,
this kind of stems from the see. I think I have heard this. I almost disagree in principle, though they'll tell me this is true. But it stems from the anything is possible. And so if you wait long enough, then eventually there will be a brain.
Right. Or if if the universe is truly infinite, like there's only so many ways that matter can arrange itself. So in theory, if you just keep going and going and going, traveling, eventually you'll run into the same stuff you saw before, because that's all that it could do. Eventually it has to repeat.
Okay.
So if you went far enough, there'd be another Amy Newman just like you on another planet. Yeah, you never know, right?
Well, I'll say I am interested in brains. The funny thing, not to go too far down that rabbit hole, but I think the key to understanding artificial intelligence and creating synthetic biology is getting over what I call our brain bias, in that because we stem from the brain, we are so biased towards viewing the brain as so friggin' cool that we really don't care about, like if you took a study of how many people go into neurology versus urology. It's just we're so interested in the brain. And so to kind of be able to create synthetic biology, you're going to have to value every other organ as much as we value the brain, because you're going to have to create synthetic, urology system that works just as well as our brain.
Yeah, Sal's back. Sal, did you hear what we were saying?
And
before?
welcome back, Sal.
Oh, yes, I was listening intently, and
Okay.
you all bring up a very good point. Echoing what I was saying is we only have so many hours in the day. We're not going to be able to be
Indeed.
Lawrence Krauss's or biochemists like Francis. Francis Collins was an MD, PhD, double degrees, quantum mechanics and medicine. And there are
My
lots of
joke
people like
is a super. We're all going for. I call it a superhero or a supervillain level of degrees. When you're in a movie, they're just like, oh yeah, I'm blah 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 doctor, and they just point to the wall. And it just has all the degrees, and everyone's like, okay, and then they just go forward.
So, Sal, if I could ask, go ahead and make your point.
So I was just saying that I try not to tell people how to live their lives. That's just not me. I try not to ridicule where they are, because we're all finite and we're all kind of just doing the best we can to get by, trying to find time to do things. So I don't give someone a hard time if they haven't learned something, because there are lots of things I wish I could learn, but I don't have time to. And,
no, finish your point.
So that's all. So when you're talking about your thoughts about evolution, it's like, well, what little I could do is just try to learn a little bit more biology, and maybe a little isn't as much as we'd want, but it's maybe. Yeah. All I could say is I've never regretted trying to learn more and spending the time. And yeah, it's a sacrifice and it's not fun. A lot of because I'm a terrible student, so I totally get that.
Well, that's the great thing about science, is that we all, you learn your little part and you become experts in that. And so when people come on that subject, you're able to speak on that expertise. But then, you go to another category like physics or cooking or something, you go to someone else who's trained for that.
Gee, if you saw me looking here, I have four monitors set up, and I was just seeing if I was killing your audience here, and I think I only see 4 people. Well, that fourth watcher is probably my alternate computer, but oh well.
That's okay.
Oh well. Well, Sal, now if I could just
yes, please,
throw one question at you real quick. So, anybody who's talked with you knows that you're an intelligent person, you're very smart, and now tonight you've left no doubt that you have a ton of education in various scientific fields. Nobody could challenge that anymore because you demonstrated it. But how do you reconcile the fact, or does it ever give you pause that most of the other scientists in those fields, they look at the same data you look at, they know the same things that you know, and they don't come to the conclusion on young Earth, or they don't see the problems you see with evolution theory. They don't seem to be bothered by that. And we can only be true to ourselves. You can't, if you're convinced of something, you can't just say, well, they don't think so, so I'm gonna just go with what they say. But do you ever think about that?
Oh yes. And some young Earth creationists will get upset with what I'm about to say. They got upset with me when I said that their use of the second law of thermodynamics is a terrible argument for creationism in biology, and I've still never lived that down. I still say, regarding give us pause. I say there's a lot of evidence against a young cosmos because of the distant starlight problem. We still have a problem with radiometric dating. So it's not even just the scientists themselves. It is the data we have in hand So that gives me pause. So that is at variance at this present time with my personal beliefs. As someone trying to responsibly teach creationist, I would say, okay, this is what I believe. However you interpret the Bible, that's on you. Some of you will read it literally, some won't. But I got to level with you here as a applied physics student. The distant starlight problem is very serious. And if you can't wave it off, I'm right there with you. So yes, that's one area, big pause. Next pause is the problems with radiometric dating. There are some solutions, and I almost went to get my PhD at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, I'm sorry, because they had some friendliness to the idea of alternative methods of nucleosynthesis, which might solve some of the radiometric problems. So those are two big answers. Yes, those are two big pauses. For origin of life, I've debated enough of these guys for origin of life, which is separate from the theory of evolution. And I've gotten mentored by two biochemists, one of them being a Harvard-trained biochemist.
And can I put a pin in here? Because to me, I feel like evolution is a fact, and yet the thing I can grant the theists is I can't say abiogenesis, and actually abiogenesis is a fact, and so I feel like. And yet I feel like it would stop so much of our trouble in schools if they weren't fighting against evolution, because they're not teaching abiogenesis. And so I would say in that direction, Sal, I don't want you to stop being a theist. I just want you to come on board the evolution train.
Well, and then thank you. With respect to evolution, it gave me pause because we're very, very similar to chimpanzees. And I can't believe all the creationists saying we're not that similar. And just like, goodness, I do gene browsing almost every other week. I'm more focused on proteins. I'm not really a genetics guy. There is a distinction. But even in studying the proteins, I know of some proteins like the cytochrome C and some other ones that were 100% identical with the chimps. I've seen... looks, if I recall correctly, some of the pseudogenes are even shared. And I'm like, yeah, okay, so this should be very troubling for creationists. Now, on the other hand, I studied eukaryotic evolution, and I've debated evolutionary biologists. They don't want to debate me on that because I did get trained by someone who is a molecular biologist, and that is her specialty, to teach on the difference between the prokaryotic domain and the eukaryotic, and evolutionists will not debate me on that because they know that they're going to get a real scientific challenge. So I gave them the area where the pauses are, just to be fair, trying to be direct here to James's question. The physics problem with the distant starlight, the age of the cosmos, the radiometric dating problem, the problems with human chimp similarity is very strong. But I think the creationists have a good argument with abiogenesis being something exceptional. It's not natural. And I'd side with them on eukaryotic evolution. Now, there was something I'm having kind of a Joe Biden moment. I'm sorry, I can't remember. There's something else I wanted to say. Oh, the thing that actually gives me the biggest pause is in Christian theology, there are people that are going to hell. And some of the people that I really love, I'm just like, God, why? They're just like the sweetest, most wonderful people I ever know. That probably gives me more problems than anything in the scientific realm.
And could it truly be a heaven if you know that other people are in hell? And it could truly be you if you know or unhappy?
Well, as I said, that's the thing I'm just being upfront here. That's the thing that's probably one of the hardest things for me to deal with. And we just, I see these little children that have childhood cancer, and like, yeah, this is perhaps if I wanted to still believe in intelligent design and adopt another religion, I'd adopt a religion that's kind of more, I don't know. I don't know enough about Eastern religions. There's this book, Eat, Love, Pray by Elizabeth Gilbert. That'd be kind of more my religion because you'd avoid problems like hell. And so if you're asking me what gives me pause, that one probably is the hardest thing I deal with.
And so that's kind of the Euthyphro dilemma.
I've never heard of that.
Oh, really?
No.
Give me a second, and so I can quote it correctly. But yeah, hold on.
Well, while you're looking that up, I'm just going to say to Sal.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, like from what I see and from my perspective, we're looking at the natural world. We're looking at the universe. We're looking at, everything that we see. And it all seems to line up with naturalism. It all seems to point away from the God question. And so we see all the believers and Christians, they're always coming in and trying to explain away everything that we see in the natural world. And it's like, it seems like a lawyer with like an obviously guilty client where the evidence is like overwhelming. And he's up there just trying to make excuse after excuse, poke a few holes here. But, the weight of the evidence all seems to point to a naturalistic universe.
My response to that is that this whole fine-tuning problem, we wouldn't have life, therefore no science if there weren't fine-tuning. Fine-tuning, I one time, about 15 years ago or so, I went down to University of Virginia to give a talk. And there were atheist professors there. And one of the professors of physics kind of, we were privately, I mean, this wasn't so private, I can't share it. He kind of just, his head kind of sunk down. He said, yeah, fine tuning, that's a real problem. We don't know what to do with that. And that is something that is not natural. And for that reason, there's been a persistent minority in physics that are theists. Then there was a professor at my alma mater that said the universe is spiritual and mental. He actually got that published as an opinion essay in the journal Nature in 2005, the same year that I was in the journal Nature. And I'll provide that as a link. So this again kind of goes, while I was away, I thought about what Pascal's Wager really meant. It's not about heaven. It's really whether you should go to church or not, or continue going to church. So it's actually been blown out of proportion the way it's been phrased. That is not the original.
So can I give you, I think, one of our main thing all the atheists voted on last night, or I voted on, is the number one reason why theists, we think, believe in Pascal's Wager is fear of hell. That if you're afraid of hell, that is like the argument you're going to go for.
It's really funny. Just as a FYI, I don't think I've ever done a poll of Christians. That would be no, seriously. And actually, I got a letter from someone, and I've since blocked him because I'm kind of upset with him. He was saying, "Oh, please prayerfully consider backing out of that debate. What you're doing is so ungodly."
Really?
Yeah.
The Dillahunty debate? Your upcoming debate?
Yeah. He said Pascal's Wager is not of God. I'm just like, you don't even know what I'm going to say.
Can I just say, Sal, I both find that funny and yet and I'm offended for you at the same time. I find that common. I find, James, do you back me up on this? A common thing that I'm finding recently is they're like, listen, you non-Christian Christians, shut the... And you're like, hey, calm down. We're just trying to have a debate here. And I'm like, hey, I'll let you theists just have this one up between yourselves. I'll just sit back and have a drink.
Oh yeah, sometimes I'll just watch Smokey's channel with like some popcorn and watch all the blood sport going on. And they spend a lot of time attacking other Christians who have different beliefs on different points of doctrine. And, it's the same questions that have been debated and thrown around for 2,000 years. He
paid for a super chat on our debate to attack Neff. He didn't go for the atheist. He went for the other theist.
Well, I mean, Smokey is an intelligent guy. and he has put a lot of thought into his positions. He truly believes what he says, and he takes it personal if you think he's wrong about something like that.
Oh,
To me,
goodness.
that's evolutionary. I said this the other night. It's evolutionary to attack not exactly your same species, but if you're close related species enough, they could become
Well,
prey.
I mean, I'm just not the sort of person to tell people how to live. I have hard enough time trying to figure out my own life, and I just
Seem like a nice guy.
yeah. Oh, thank you. I there- I mean, now looking back, I think I'm very empathetic to other people, and I just don't like telling people what to do. There's a passage in the Bible that says, he's without sin, cast the first stone, and it's like, yeah, I'm not really. I have enough challenges just living my own life. I'm not going to go around telling people how to live theirs. I mean, if people ask me what I believe, I'm more than happy to talk about it.
Yeah.
But and if they want to try to learn, oh, by the way, a chance for promotion.
Absolutely.
I have a channel that is just focused on academics, teaching basic chemistry, physics, math, and biology for creationists. It's the primary reason I'm making these classes available. Is one way to actually learn is to try to teach a subject, and I've forgotten a lot of things, and so it's a great opportunity for me to relearn things and maybe be of service to other people. So that is more what I enjoy doing. I don't like, I don't like being too confrontational. One, it doesn't help. I mean, some people get theater at it, but I'm for trying to just figure out how things work and just learn more, because I'd rather listen and learn more than just spout off my opinion. But I am very grateful for the opportunity you've given me a chance to have the platform and speak. And I'm grateful to Modern Day Debate, the other James, for
Absolutely.
putting me
Yeah.
up with Matt Dillahunty. So I expect what you saw today in my interactions to probably be very similar to what you see on Monday with a few twists. But this was actually good practice because, as you said, what was it? What was the vote that you had? The vote you had?
Well, we were just wrapping up and going. What we thought was the most convincing, because what's the convincing arguments to atheists? Because if you ever ask us, that's a common super chat question: is what are the convincing arguments, or what were the reasons you were a Christian in the first place? They're very different than a lot of the very popular intellectual arguments like Kalam and so we were going, well, why is Pascal's Wager seems to be very popular in the intellectual theist circles, and we were trying to explain why. And so we decided, or at least one of the more popular ones was that we kept coming back to, is this fear of hell.
The fear of hell, why it was. And for me, and probably thank you again for this debate prep opportunity, is it actually helped me sharpen my own understanding of what I was about to say. Pascal's Wager for my own personal life is not an argument, for the fear of hell. It was the argument to continue staying in church. That maybe somewhere in the process, some of my questions
still go to church?
My questions would be answered. I'm sorry.
Do you still go to church?
Not physically because of the COVID lockdown, and then also because of
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So I've been having to do it telecommuting, and I know my pastors may get on my case, but one of them I don't like. I definitely don't like what he's preaching, and there's McLean Bible Church is going through a lot of upheaval right now because it falls along political lines, and I'm on the conservative line, and the pastor's not, and you could see that coming. So.
Oh, really? That's interesting. So it's a very liberal church.
Split. I didn't realize it until President Trump showed up at our church one morning, June
Really?
2019 or 2000. Is either 2000. It might have been 2020. I'm pretty sure 2019. And David Platt prayed for him, and boy, a lot of the congregation were just livid that he prayed for President Trump. And I said, "Oh my, I guess this is along political lines," which I don't know that for sure, but it sure seemed like it. And so the church has been split ever since.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it does seem to split down those political lines. It's the social issues.
I don't remember that poll, Amy. Did you do that while I was out, or was it later at the night?
No, I was just I just mean my round table going around, and maybe it was actually got pretty busy last night. I think we had about 5 people on at our top.
Yeah, we had 4 or 5 for a while.
Oh, so go on.
No. I was gonna say I'm gonna be right back, and then I have some points that are they're like semi-related, but they're not antagonistic at all because they're like poker and all sorts of stuff.
Okay, great.
I'll be right back.
So there is. I'll wait till Amy gets back. Well, it was really great. Talking to you, James, again. I'm trying to Google my own channel. I don't have a named channel yet for I started this new channel for what do I call it? I started a new channel for my academic stuff. And I'm just going to put that in when Amy comes back. I'll request that she posts it. But I did, I hope I kind of addressed your question about things that give me pause.
That there's a different channel that's not on your Evidence and Reason channel.
I'm starting it now. It's Evidence Reasons Academy. So it has the same kind of similar title, but this is where we actually go into very specific. It's mostly academics, partly because some of the things I talk about, especially in the creation evolution controversy, I'm just like creationists. It'd be really helpful if you actually understood a little bit more biology. If you spent 30 hours a month just listening to open mics, if you could spend maybe 3 hours learning a little chemistry and cellular biology, I think that would go a long way. That's kind of what I've been prodding them to do. And to help me actually get mastery of the subject, and also to provide a service so that they can learn some of these things without having to go through a 3-year course. I'm making it available. I had a tutorial session yesterday that's related to the origin of life, but also beating the casinos. It's on the topic of expected value. So you can actually see me teaching someone about expected value. And I was fumbling through it because it's been a while and I couldn't quite get all the math symbols typed out nicely and pretty printed. So when Amy gets back, then we could talk about gambling.
And I am back. And okay, it's funny that, so just because we hear certain terms in movies and everything, but what exactly is counting cards? You're trying to...
Sure, I'll show you.
Yeah.
I'll show you. Now, I'm just, I couldn't quite type this. I was wondering if you could, I had a couple links that I just posted to my new YouTube channel.
Sure.
It's my educational channel. It's by the same name, Evidence Reasons, but it's Evidence Reasons Academy. And that just teaches physics.
Well, I think that's great, Sal, that you're doing that.
That's really more what I like doing. I don't like debating. I'll debate for advertising. I mean, I'd like to advertise, but I'm not like Standing for Truth and LPP. They're just so eager to.
We'll see.
Yeah,
it's
but
funny.
Help them learn, Sal. Help them learn.
Yeah,
there's so many of them that just parrot the same intelligent design talking points over and over again, and they don't really understand what they're saying, you know.
Okay, so I'm going to get a deck of cards, and I can show you how to card count.
Okay.
You've never heard of card counting, Amy, or
No,
or you just want a better
um,
explanation?
in fact, I've heard of it. It's almost like a cultural term, and we all kind of know what it is, but I guess just the physicality of it.
Okay.
Because I'm just getting because of Norm Macdonald, goddamn Norm Macdonald. Gosh darn it, I'm getting into poker, and so I'm now interested in that. I don't think I want to because I don't want to get kicked out. It's funny. Not only has Sal he had that story or someone, but I think Norm Macdonald got kicked out once. He's good. He's good.
I mean, essentially, this is just a paraphrasing, but you're reducing the game down to mathematical and probability constructs and using that to try to, determine how much you should bet at any given time.
Okay, so I'll just give a very easy exercise here, and all you have to do. In fact, when I was better at this, I could actually even just look at the pips. I'd actually read the cards at about this speed because some dealers are actually even faster than what I'm doing. And you just see it like that, and you'd be some people are actually good enough to remember the sequence of cards and the suit. I was never that good, but if you were paying attention, you'd have to be trained to do this. You'd realize I haven't dealt an ace yet. Okay, so what a card counter is doing is one thing he can track. He can track the number of face cards that have been seen. That's really the more important one, but or the other cards. There are various counting techniques.
Okay.
But just notice I haven't dealt out an ace. I deliberately stacked the deck, by the way, just to illustrate the principle.
Oh, see,
Okay, so
you're a magician.
All right, so if you haven't seen an ace yet, what does that mean? This is a very ace-rich deck, and I put it at the bottom. And so if you're able to eliminate if you're able to determine what cards have not been dealt out yet, you have an advantage because the cards that haven't been dealt out are still in the deck.
Okay.
And I've done this exercise with even like 10-year-old kids. I'd take out a card from the deck, and then I'd say, okay, now you have the rest of the deck. Figure out what cards left. Figure out what card I took out. And they could always figure it out. Of course, they would have to lay it out on the table and just carefully examine. And, it'd take them about maybe around 10 minutes, give or take.
They build it
They'll
into
say,
it.
oh, you had an ace of spades. And then I would do that with another card. And that's just like a neat little trick. But you could see that when you can estimate what's in the deck based on what you've seen, you begin to have an advantage. And particularly in blackjack, when there is an abundance of face cards, 10, Jack, Queen, King, like tens and kings.
Okay.
And in a casino environment, there's reflections, all sorts of things, and my eyesight's no longer as good as it was. You
That's
actually look at every
question.
Huh?
My second question is, now that you've shown that, it almost seems like it seems fair when you lay it out like that. So why don't casinos let you do it? And what do they want you to do? Do they want you just not to think hard? Do they just want you to
basically?
Because basically what they realized, people that acquired the skill, because I used to be able to count the cards this even faster
really
speed.
fast.
So it's not an easy skill to master. I had to practice a lot. And you have to be able to do it with all sorts of distractions. But if you master the skill, the casinos, what they will say is, we have the right to refuse to do business with anyone. So if they don't kick you out, what they could say is, we're not going to deal cards to you. So in some places like Atlantic City, where the government has said that you can't kick out card counters, what they can do to make it really miserable for you is they'll deal out maybe a few decks and then reshuffle. and everyone hates that because it slows the game down. And plus the card counter can't do anything because the way the card counter is able to get his advantage is like once a big, so say the deck is like just, they don't really do single deck anymore, but just hypothetically, when enough of the deck is dealt, it's the advantage is in the remainder of the deck. You have a better estimate. And so when they do these shuffle ups where they just deal out a few cards and then reshuffle, you can't beat the game anymore. So there are various ways where they don't have to kick you out, but can still make it impossible for you to make money.
Or now they can step in, and what they can do, I've seen them do, is make it so that the person is stuck on one bet. So if you start betting 50, you have to bet $50 on all the hands, because what a card counter will do is he knows the odds of him winning based on getting a card that he wants, and if the odds are very low, he's going to bet a low amount, and then he's going to raise that bet when he knows the odds are in his favor, but they'll lock you in one, so you're taking just as many losses as you are wins.
Right. And so what's funny is the casinos, they found out that when the game, it's just kind of one of those strange things, and I think it's kind of like game theory, is it actually helps if the game is somewhat beatable, because then you get more people who think they can beat the game and they never actually get the skills. And so the casinos made a ton of money actually because of the fact that it's beatable. And you have like 90% of the people that think they have the skills, or 95%, and they don't. The casinos have made a lot of money off of.
Well, that's why I find slots annoying. That's what got me into poker, is because I was sitting there at the slot machine with my friend, and I'm like, I can't. I could sit here and I'll break even if I spend here long enough, if I'm lucky. But that's the thing with poker, right? You can make. And so the one point I wanted to make is, so you're telling me they make you a liability. What they're saying, they make you annoying to the people around you or whatever. So they're like, listen, buddy, until you stop doing whatever you're doing, we're going to make everyone give you the stink eye until you get the hell out of here.
Yep. Now it's different in Indian casinos. In Indian casinos, there are no rules. And they got me one time. They detained me. That was kind of scary. And the joke is, the tribal elders will decide your fate. That's really, and I'll tell you the casino, and I hope
that's fascinating.
It's Traverse City. There's a casino, Grand Traverse Resort, I think, and the tribal police got after me, and they said, "Yeah, we're the law here." It's like, oh boy, and I took them for like $6,000, and I mentioned earlier, math professor R. Michael Conjar, very early in this talk. He was my mentor, who's a professor of mathematics. He said, yeah, that place was like an ATM. He was getting $6,000 out of him every visit. He said after the 10th visit, they barred him. So he said that place was like an ATM. It was so easy to beat.
Well, that's the way. That's my joke with they normally view people. I call it, you're going to donate to the casinos.
Yeah.
And normally.
Now there is a kind of a slot machine game. It's called video poker that can be beatable under some circumstances. And I learned a little bit of video poker. There's like it's been that long that I'm now forgetting. There used to be beatable games in video poker, and that was fun.
Well, I saw that video poker is a little interesting. I looked that up when I was learning poker, and video poker is kind of like a hybrid. It's not quite poker, and it's not quite a slot machine. It's like a hybrid.
Yeah. So I have a video poker simulator, and every now and then when I'm just, it's been a long time since I've even touched the simulator, but I actually enjoy just playing it, kind of the simulated game. It's really strange. People that are actually skilled gamblers don't like to put out money because they hate putting it out at risk.
Yeah,
because there's no guarantee you're going to win. And again, this is Pascal's Wager. It's like even if the odds are in your favor, it doesn't mean you're going to win. In fact, blackjack players like myself, we win only 42.5% of the hands. And the way we beat the casinos is winning. When we win, we have to win a little bit bigger to make up for all the other times we don't. And so that's a little bit about card counting. Now, what I would just suggest, and it's free, you can probably find some online simulators, and you could just bet Monopoly money, which isn't any real money. That would be, maybe that's a tip to encourage you.
That's what I do.
Like a video game where you don't get any money. When I play a video game, I don't get any money, but I enjoy the challenge. And so that might be because the reason I say that, and it's kind of one of the sadder things, is I saw how the casinos would just ruin people's lives. You see some of these gambling addicts, they've lost all their money, and ruins their family.
You win once. You win really big once, and then the gambler's fallacy kicks in, and you're like, well, I gotta win eventually. I won once, and then you've not only won the pot, but you've gone to your ATM like 3 times, and you're like, look, it owes me. I won that time.
And and that's what we call the law of large numbers and expectation values. And so I like talking about gambling, but it does bother my conscience a little bit if I try to. I don't want to make it seem like I'm encouraging people to go to casinos. I want them to have fun playing games, but
and this is our daily reminder.
Yeah, play games like video games that won't cost you money. It might cost you time, but it's bad that be cost time and money. And if one wants to be a card counter, that was seriously hard work. But I mean, I was willing to do it because I think I mentioned this. My father passed away, or I may have mentioned it in another talk. He passed away in 2003, and I was heartbroken. Oh. It was just kind of in a pastime, and so I spent a full year learning how to count cards before I played live in a casino. That was a whole year of training in my free time.
See, I do free poker online. That's a plug for them. And just like you were saying, it's basically just Monopoly money.
Yeah. Oh, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad. Because there are people on the other side for some of these online poker games where they're dealing with real money. And you never know if the party on the other side is using computers. And if he is, boy, you're toast. You're just not going to beat him.
Well, the card in Vegas, they tried to years back start arresting card counters and charging them with cheating, but when those cases went to the court said it's not cheating. They're just they're skillfully using all the information available to them, so they can't charge you with a crime, but they can kick you out.
Yeah, they can't kick. I got kicked out. It's really funny. You see the name of the casino is South Point.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first casino I got kicked out of in Las Vegas. So my favorite casino is the Venetian. Oh my goodness, the Venetian, such a elegant, beautiful place. I love classical music. They have classical music all around the casino. It's just that's just my personal taste.
But like any addiction, people can go overboard, and it can cause a lot of damage to real people.
Yeah. So that's why, Amy, that's why I was just trying to make sure you didn't get involved in something that hurt your pocketbook.
No, exactly. Even if I ever go to Atlantic City I think I'd do like $50, $100, and my view will always forever be that this money is being donated to them, that this should not be any money that I think I can make a living out of. I like games, whether they're board games, whether one of my bachelors is in game development. I just like games. And so of all the gambling, because I've always actually been against gambling. This is the only thing that I've been semi into, and it's because I've been sitting there with Monopoly money, like you said, just playing versus AI mostly, not even against people.
Yeah, and at that stage it's fine, and I'm delighted to hear that. I do get concerned when I hear some friends wanting to play poker. I said, yeah, even I'm a skilled gambler. I would not want to play poker because
Well, there's a difference between, to get super geeky, there's a difference between someone who plays League of Legends and someone who's a Twitch streamer and a pro gamer that makes money. And everyone when they first hear that even those two categories exist, they go, what? And they go, I'm going to do that. And then all of a sudden they're like, with sweat dropping from their head, they're like, okay, maybe this was a little harder and maybe I should stay in school.
you're the second person who've even mentioned that. I didn't even know it existed, that there are pro gamers.
Oh,
You mentioned the
absolutely.
word Twitch, and where else?
Twitch. So you could be a streamer, which is just someone who plays video games. I wouldn't even say it has to be competitively, but they are a good orator or whatever. Like they're good at narrating their games and they get people to come watch them. Or you can be a pro gamer where it's kind of like you are in a team and there's sometimes there's even like a manager and they take it serious and they have competitions and go to town and there's a winner and a ladder board and stuff.
I mean, people will pay them money to watch them play
Absolutely.
PlayStation for 4 hours. Yeah.
Well, I kind of get it because we pay money to watch football games or something, and I kind of. Now I didn't know that, but there is an old video game that I play that I feel that I'm the number one player in the world. X-Wing versus TIE Fighter Flight School.
Hey.
It's like a 30-year-old video game that could play like on the old MS Windows, like I
had that
Windows
game,
XP, Windows
TIE Fighter.
XP, and I'm trying to save some of my sessions, and I have to try to figure out how to get it to connect to my VGA system. And I think I just want to archive it and show that I could beat all the scenarios without losing my spacecraft, and show them how I could shoot down a Imperial Star Destroyer. I know that's really silly, and I used to take handwritten diaries of my adventures on the video game.
Hey, no, that doesn't sound too far from anyone having a role-playing game.
So I had, those were memorable years. Those were some happy years of my life. A part of my past. So it's actually kind of fun talking about lighter stuff like that. So I probably should be going.
I was going to say, we're coming up to the second hour, and I think it's been a good conversation. I think it's been fun.
Absolutely.
So
with that, let's go in reverse order so that I can give Sal the last word. Do you want to say something, James, and then we'll go Sal, and then we'll just close out.
Sure. Well, I do want to thank you, Sal, for taking the time out of your day to spend time answering our questions and helping us understand more about who you are and why you believe what you believe. And, that is helpful, and it's interesting for us to be able to understand each other. And it's not always about who's right or wrong, or, it's not only about winning the debate, but it also is important to listen to the other side and at least respect other people's views. You might think they're wrong, but especially in your case, you are a good faith actor. You are a sincere person. So, yeah, thanks again for coming on, Sal.
And cool. So we're going to pass it off to Sal, and he can have as long as he'd like for a closer. And then I'm just going to tell everyone how awesome they are, and good night.
Well, thank you very much, Amy and James. And I wish you and all the viewers here a very happy new year, 2021. I feel very privileged to have a chance. It was a very kind offer for you all to give me a chance to do a debate prep. And I actually was able to refine my own understanding of Pascal's Wager. This debate came upon me very suddenly, and so this is a really good opportunity for me to refine my thoughts. And it's always nice to have a friendly platform that's not debate, where I could just just have a conversation like a conversation among friends. And I prefer that far more than trying to get on the stage and trying to humiliate the opponent. That is just not me. You all are invited to. I only have 4 subscribers on my Evidence Reasons Academy. Anyone's welcome to join there. One of my first videos among them is us teaching about gambling theory, expected values. So you all are very lovely people, James and Amy. And
Thank you, Sal.
yeah, and
So are you.
yeah, it's been a real privilege getting to hang out with you, and thank you again for the very kind invitation. I invite everyone to see my debate with Matt Dillahunty, and you'll get to see some arguments you haven't seen here. But on the other hand, you've probably gotten to hear a little bit of material that I probably won't have the chance to present on Monday night. So take care, and again, thank you, James and Amy.
Have a good night, Sal. Look forward to seeing the debate. It should be a good show.
Thank you so much, Sal, for coming on. And I'm just going to give a shout out to Modern Day Debate, January 4th. Don't miss Matt Dillahunty versus Sal. And I want to thank you guys both for coming on to our Midnight Ranting Pascals Wager.
Matt Dillahunty is a human iron chariot, and Sal needs to be prepared.
I agree. I look forward to it, and good night, guys.